Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining. If you'd like to drop your name and where you're joining from in the chat, that's always nice to see who's here today. We're expecting about 50, so we'll give them a couple more minutes to trickle in. Hi, Dr. K. And just so folks know, you're muted when you enter, but you do have the ability to unmute yourself if you want to ask questions later on.
I've been talking to myself, Cody. That's what I do here.
You're not alone, Craig.
You say it's a sign of genius, so you know.
I was just commenting that Leo joined our Association of Compost Producers Zero Footprint, I think well over a year ago, and just participated in our monthly meeting. We really appreciated that as we start to connect the dots. And so looking forward to this. I'm so glad to see Resource Conservation District hosting this. Really, really great.
Cool.
Good morning, everybody.
Hello.
You're going to get a bunch of ACP, Association of Compost Producer members, by the way, joining. Part of our monthly meeting was to join this webinar.
Cool. I see we've got some friends from San Mateo RCD, Ventura County. Hello, hello. All right. So I think we're good to start. Joel, thanks for letting people in as we go. So thank you all for joining. This meeting is being recorded, so this will be available for you all later as a resource. My name is Cody Hale. I work as the Agricultural Outreach Assistant for the Resource Conservation District, or RCD for short, of Greater San Diego County. We're really happy that you're all here. We are joined today with Leo Beckerman, the Director of Operations from Zero Footprints, which is the organization that hosts this awesome opportunity to get subsidized compost for agricultural producers. And we will also hear from Kelsey Jacobson, the Environmental Education Associate Manager of the Solana Center here in North County of San Diego. So we'll start with a presentation from Joel Kramer, the Agricultural Specialist of our RCDs, information on the Healthy Soils demonstration site that we've been supporting for the last couple of years. Compost was a large portion of that work. And then we'll hear from Kelsey at Solana Center about some of their upcoming opportunities for educational opportunities and workshops. And then the majority of this will be learning from Leo and from the Zero Footprint perspective of how to apply to this compost connector program. And we'll also get an in-depth tutorial, a step-by-step about how to actually apply to this program. After each presentation, you'll have the opportunity to directly ask questions, come off mute, or fill the chat for the presenters. So we're hoping that there is a good amount of engagement here. And before we start, for those who are maybe not familiar with how our RCD supports our regional agriculture, our region that we support goes from the border of Mexico all the way west to the ocean, all the way east to Borrego Springs, and all the way north to about the Vista and Valley Center area. So it's a large swath of focus, and we support with irrigation efficiency evaluations. If you have any interest in implementing or enhancing pollinator habitat on your working lands, we can help with that. We also help folks apply to grants, and for those who receive grants, we can help them with monitoring and management of those grants. If you need soil samples or have any questions about resources for implementing a new practice, we're there to support, as well as if you have any interest in receiving a carbon farming plan or have a question about what a carbon farm plan is, we can help with that. So I will drop the information to get a hold of Joel or myself and anyone else in our agricultural department if you have any questions, and also a link to our newsletter in case you're not already part of that. So I will pass this off to Joel here to present about our Healthy Soils demonstration site.
Thanks so much, Cody. Thanks to Kelsey and Leo for joining today. Looking forward to hearing what you all have to say as well. My name is Joel Kramer. I'm the agricultural specialist at the Resource Conservation District of Greater San Diego County. And as Cody mentioned, we're one of 3 RCDs in San Diego serving ranchers and farmers to improve their conservation practices on the ground. So great to see some of you here today from the agricultural community locally and also from other RCDs around the state. I just wanted to talk a little bit about a California Department of Food and Agriculture grant that we're currently working on. As many of you know, CDFA runs a Healthy Soils program where they fund producers to implement practices through incentives. They also offer demonstration grants where, in partnership with organizations like ours, a producer can show an innovative practice that they're scaling up, and I think others should as well. So we've done a couple of these grants. One of them focused on kind of flat vegetable production, which is in our community garden in the Tijuana River Valley. And that was a great place where we got off the ground, showing producers about implementing these practices. And at that site and neighboring sites, we saw from a baseline of clearing native scrub all the way to 2 years down the road of adding compost with each season, a very close alignment of the frequency of compost added with the increase in soil organic matter. And a spin-off of that project was a ranching project in Rancho Hamul, which has been very interesting, where it's been a little bit different monitoring the soil organic matter there because the fertilization comes from the animals and we've had drought years, so there's a lot of variability. This project that I'm going to share is on an orchard, and it's interesting because it's just a different environment, both to enhance the soil organic matter and just to work on. And I'll be talking about some of those challenges as we dig in. But the primary challenge at this site has been water. And so the grower that we're working with has been very motivated to improve upon the practices previously there to conserve water. The original grove and grove owner grew the trees to 70 feet in height, and they were planted in the 60s. It's 30 acres in Escondido. And it was a very productive grove, but that height made it very vulnerable as well to drought, heat waves, and wildfire. So kind of in that order, when drought struck, the water rates increased. That meant that it was very expensive to water during heat waves. And as the orchard dried out, that made it susceptible to wildfire and part of the grove burned. So that original owner saw the times had changed and decided to move on and passed it on to the current grower that we're working with, who not only transitioned it to organic production, but wanted to implement soil health practices to improve water retention. And so we were awarded a Department of Food and Agriculture demonstration grant to look at different sections of this farm in different plots and think about what types of cover crops, compost, and mulching could improve the soil health, and which of those would be most not only effective in improving soil organic matter, but which of those would be cost effective. And so the mulching was done through an incentives grant, and composting and cover cropping has been done through this demonstration grant. And so in this process of cover cropping annually and adding compost to top dress the cover crop, we've been monitoring the soil organic carbon, soil moisture, the biomass of that cover crop, and some of the costs involved in the application. So I just wanted to share some baseline results with you. And the qualifier here is that since there's only been 2 years of monitoring, there's a lot of noise in the results. But one thing that we see that's common is that throughout all those fields across varying slopes and soil types, we see pretty high organic matter. The baseline is above 3 in all situations. For a point of reference, a pretty degraded site might look more around 1%, and a very well-tended site with chocolatey soil would be around 8. So we're actually starting at a good level here, even though it was conventionally managed. The mulch produced by the avocado trees really built up a nice organic matter layer. But we decided to focus our study on this first field, which you see in brown on the far left, with the control and treatment sites are roughly the same. And so I'll dig into the year 2 results here. And keep in mind, there is some noise here. So what we see is, for some reason or another, both the control and treatment sites increased slightly in the percent organic matter between years 1 and 2. The treatment site increased slightly more, but I don't think we can conclude anything from that. Also, the ratio of carbon to nitrogen increased more in the control site than in the treatment site. So I think we have a little more, perhaps, fresh material in that site where we have cover crops present and we're irrigating those cover crops. But again, it's just 1 year of comparison. The last thing to share is the infiltration results, which improved greatly for both the control and treatment sites, reduced by about 50%, which means any water flooding the soil, not just 1 inch, but the second inch of rainfall, should there be a flash flood, more rapidly was soaked up into the soil in our simulation. So this is all fine and well on a theoretical basis, but I'm excited to be with you here today because I think we're talking about how do we get this done? What are the costs behind that, and how do we make it happen? And the reality is a lot of avocado orchards in San Diego are on these steep slopes with narrow alleys. Dr. Kalaji here came onto the site to do a field presentation just a few months ago as part of their composting facility. And one of the big takeaways there was, in our common effort to improve soil health, it's very important that producers have the equipment that they need to deal with this tough terrain. So as you can see, we've got steep slopes, narrow alleys, and on top of that, there's a nationwide shortage of labor. There's not enough people to go around to improve the soils and work on farms, whether it's a profitable business like strawberries or a more staple crop. And lastly, to kind of close that gap, equipment would seem to be something that would be relevant, where a farm manager could go ahead and do it themselves if they had the right equipment. But even there, we're finding at this scale, for a lot of these small groves of maybe 5 acres, max 10 acres, and with steep slopes, it's hard to get the big machinery out there to kind of blow the material on site, and the small machinery isn't currently available. And so we've been excited to work with compost facilities in the region, other RCDs, cooperative extension, and are really looking for ways to help producers acquire the right equipment to make programs like Compost Connector more effective from the waste facility all the way out to the operation. So I'd be glad to answer any questions you might have.
So Joel, we did have a question in the chat from Paul Lum asking how infiltration rate was measured.
Thanks, Paul. Yeah, so for infiltration rate, we take a metal circle. It's about 6 inches in height, tap it into the ground, and then we simulate an inch of rainfall falling onto the ground. And so we pour a set volume, 500 milliliters, onto that ring and let it soak into the soil, and we time that. And then we do it a second time, simulating a flash flood where there'd be 2 inches of rainfall at once, and we compare that. And so what I showed on this slide was the ratio of the first to the second. And we want to see that the second time that it infiltrates is pretty close to the first one. Otherwise, the soil's been saturated, it's hitting a clay layer, it's hitting bedrock, but something is causing the water not to infiltrate, and we'd expect surface runoff. And that's another reason why we were using things like compost and cover crops, because even in clay-rich soils, as we find on some of these slopes in San Diego, you can improve the soil infiltration so that that rainfall is absorbed. Thanks for the question.
All right. Any more questions? If some pop into your head later, you can always put them in the chat and we can share them out. Thank you, Joel, for your update on that site.
Thank you.
And we will pass it on to Kelsey at the Solana Center to let us know about some upcoming programs they have.
Awesome. Thank you, Cody. I appreciate you having me. I'll go ahead and share my screen real quick. Got just a few slides to go through. Everything, if I'm on the right slide, looking good on your folks' end. Fantastic. Awesome. So hello, everyone. Good morning. My name is Kelsey. As Cody introduced, I'm Environmental Education Associate Manager at Solana Center. I'll let you know a little bit more about what our organization does and why we're here as part of this webinar. But we offer a wide array of environmental education and services to the San Diego community and beyond, with a really big focus on composting. So we are a nonprofit organization. We've been here in the San Diego region for almost 40 years now, and we work with municipalities and through a wide array of other funding sources to offer all sorts of education, mainly to folks with regards to zero waste, soil building, watershed health, and composting is really this beautiful connection that brings all of those different concepts together. So we have a lot of different offerings that I'll talk about that are both here local in the San Diego region and available virtually no matter where you are. I will add the caveat, I was planning to have quite a few things already scheduled for this webinar so that I could send links and be like, go register for this right now. But things are getting a little tied up in coordination. So I'll let you know towards the end if you're interested in taking advantage of some of the programming I'll mention, how you can get in touch and be notified when some of those opportunities come online, but some of it will be available right now, just not as much as I had initially intended. So we are huge advocates for composting because, I mean, with how we promote zero waste, food waste is definitely a huge issue that has come up, and thankfully the state of California has really recognized this, as Leo will be talking about in his presentation with regards to SB 1383. But we really like to push the idea that our organic waste is actually a resource, not waste. It can be turned into something that is incredibly valuable, especially for those that are looking to grow food. And by composting it and turning it into a soil amendment, there are huge benefits, not only for our climate crisis and trying to address all of the problems we are facing here on this planet with regards to sequestering soil in our carbon instead of our atmosphere. Compost is amazing for that, reducing methane emissions from organic materials in our landfills. But of course, beyond our climate, there are so many benefits for farmers and the communities that they serve as well, with nutrient cycling, helping to protect watersheds, just so many incredible benefits through composting. And that is why we love helping to teach people at all scales, whether in their backyard or on a large farm or ranch, how to be able to manage their organic materials and turn it into something that has benefits for them and the world at large as well. So and through this process of clearly, I need to be more familiar with my slides. We can see all sorts of benefits for farmers with amending soil, with compost, and all sorts of other organic materials, increased plant vigor, ability to withstand drought, which is incredibly important here in California and in so many places nationwide, and creating a food system that continue to support us as we all feel feel climate change more and more throughout the years. So we partner with many different sponsors, but for the programs I'll be talking about today, we work really closely with the County of San Diego, specifically their recycling and watershed protection divisions. So some different things we do for folks who are here and local to the San Diego area. We do offer composting and livestock workshops, so both teaching folks how to compost and how to manage manure and and take care of their livestock in a way that is environmentally friendly. We do an on-farm composting course, which is a 3-week course. It is tentatively scheduled for spring of 2023, but still getting that locked down. And it is a hands-on course where you really get to have experience building and creating your own compost and understanding the benefits that it has and applying to your farmlands. We work with the county to offer a number of composting demonstration sites around the region. So if you're interested in composting yourself and you really want to see, like, how does this actually look like in action? How can I make this work to my unique situation? We work with these demonstration sites to be able to show people their many options and best management practices. And for those who live in unincorporated regions of San Diego County, we even do one-on-one consultations where we can sit with you and really help you understand how you can make composting work for you. But also virtually to anyone, and I'm going to try to move my little taskbar for Zoom so that I can see everything that's on my slide. We do offer composting and livestock webinars, so obviously those are accessible to anyone regardless of where you are, though the recordings are only available to those who are here locally, so you would need to join the live webinar. And we have a bunch of resources on our website as well for folks that are interested in making or using their own compost or applying other natural growing principles. So I'll share links towards the end of my quick presentation to let you know where you can find those resources. And then statewide, we work with California Department of Food and Agriculture as well through the Healthy Soils program that our friends at RCD of Greater San Diego are also heavily involved with. So we are technical assistance providers for the program, which means that we help folks that are looking to apply for it. Right now, we're in between application cycles. So anyone who is hearing about the Healthy Soils program for the first time is interested in finding out more, you might need to be put on hold, but I'll let you know how you might be able to get assistance if you want to move forward with a program like that. And we are also working with CDFA to provide ongoing education about creating and using compost and incorporating it with other soil building practices throughout farmland. So go into a little bit more detail about some of the things we do here locally. We will attend community events like our Farm and Nursery Expo that takes place through our Farm Bureau each year. So we get out there and let folks know about upcoming education opportunities and resources that are available to them if they want to make and use compost or manage manure in a way that's more environmentally friendly. As I mentioned, we do farm and ranch related webinars, so covering everything from different composting styles, natural pest prevention, landscaping for watershed protection, which brings together a few local experts, including Dr. Craig Kalaji, who I see is here with us today, where we talk about this really cool demonstration site where they are composting manure from like 150 horses, and they are using that compost to really build up their site, improve their soil, and using it alongside different landscaping principles that are helping to preserve and protect the watershed that they are the waterway that they are very close to. So, of course, those are local. There's a couple of our demonstration sites. So I mentioned the Equestrian Center where they're composting that manure, bringing in different native plants and very cool landscaping techniques that help, along with compost, that help to absorb as much water as possible and prevent pollution to local waterways. At Sweetwater Community Garden, which RCD, our friends who are hosting today, help to manage or do manage, and other farms and sites throughout San Diego County. So again, different opportunities if you are interested in seeing composting in action to go see many different ways that it has been implemented. And then, as I mentioned, we offer that on-farm composting course. Here's a couple pictures from our last one. So folks are getting hands-on experience building compost piles. We've used both aerated static pile and passive pile procedures. We have folks from the local county come and let folks know about regulations that exist around composting, so you can help stay, in compliance and make sure you don't have anyone knocking on your door for not composting in the most ideal way. And then we offer consultations to folks that are in unincorporated areas of our county to not only meet with video calls on them, but we can even sometimes come out to your site and really assess what is going on and help you live your best composting life, so to speak. And then as far as the Healthy Soils program, we offer application assistance. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with the Healthy Soils program, it is a program funded by the California Department of Food and Agriculture that provides a financial incentive for farmers to implement a wide array of soil building practices on their farms, orchards, ranches, vineyards. So this can include things from simple compost application, which you are probably here today interested about, mulch application, to all sorts of different permaculture plantings like hedgerows and cover crops, even nutrient management, no-till practices. So if you are interested in doing these different soil building and environmentally practices on your farm, ranch, orchard, etc., I really highly recommend looking into the Healthy Soils program, and maybe a little bit before they're accepting applications again. And it is a little bit of a rigorous application process, but the good thing is that there are many technical assistance providers, including myself, who are there to really hold your hand and walk you through the entire process, including filling out the application, figuring out which practices that you want to do. And this program really does help provide, financial certainty for folks that are looking to implement these otherwise kind of expensive practices. So statewide, during the last application period, the state made over nearly $70 million available, and 1,300 people submitted. Here in San Diego County, almost $1 million were requested to be able to sequester a significant amount of CO2 from our atmosphere. We've had a number of technical assistance providers that have helped to date, and though of course that number does vary in between application cycles. And here in our team, with the farmers that we help to assist, almost 100K in funding was requested, covering several hundred tons of CO2 emissions. So we are here and plan to be for the foreseeable future, offering farmers with assistance for not only applying to the Healthy Soils program, but our funding from CDFA also allows us to, hang with farmers throughout the implementation period and help them understand really how to make these practices work on their farmlands for them. And one of the other things we have been doing with our technical assistance funding from CDFA is offering these different compost production and use webinars. So far we've done 3, and I'm working on getting funding to do a few more. So hopefully we'll have some more that we'll be promoting and making happen in the coming months. But the 3 we've done so far have covered how to make compost on site, all of the amazing benefits of using compost, again, starring Dr. Craig Kalaji, who is by far one of our best local sources of knowledge on compost use and how it can be used to manage watersheds and help grow healthy food, preserve, our ecosystem for years to come. And then we worked with another local expert, Josh Robinson from Ecology Artisans and San Diego Sustainable Living Institute, to talk about how compost and landscaping and perennial plants can be used together to be able to support sustainable farmlands while also conserving our water resources and helping protect watersheds. So all of those already happened. However, they were recorded, and we have the links available on our website. So I'll send out the link for that as I'm wrapping up with my presentation, which I'm quite close to. So what's coming up next for us at Solana Center? As I said, we're here as an ongoing resource for all things related to composting. We're really excited to see SB 1383, which Leah will be talking about, really coming online and helping to facilitate not only organics diversion, but really helping to create a culture and an infrastructure here in our state around compost creation and use, which is just so cool to see. We have for many years wanted to help our nation move our region towards sustainable use and management of our organic resources, and use not only minimizing the waste we create, but the waste that we can't help but create, turning it back into a resource that can help sustain our soils and the local farming that goes on here in San Diego County and beyond. So we're here trying to promote a closed loop organics and nutrient management system. And with the with SB 1383 coming online and so much more of our organic materials being diverted through composting and that compost being used, we're seeing all sorts of new funding options coming available for folks to be able to use compost, especially where it's needed most on our farmland. So obviously the Compost Connector program that we'll be talking about in detail here today is one of the big stepping stones there. And also from Zero Foodprint, they offer this really cool Restore California grant, which is very much in line with the Healthy Soils program in terms of funding farmers to do compost application, mulch, all other sorts of soil building practices on their agricultural land. So I highly recommend looking into that option as well. Leo will probably be mentioning that at some point. I've helped one farmer apply so far, and it's significantly easier than the Healthy Soils program grant. So highly recommend that if you're interested. And thank you all for listening to me. As I wrap up, I'll go ahead and send a couple links in the chat. So if you're interested in any of our programming, I'll be sending out the link to our Healthy Soils program page, which has the recordings for the 3 webinars that we've done through the Healthy Soils program so far. And I'll also send a link to sign up for our newsletter if you're interested in hearing about any of our educational programming as it comes into play and as scheduled. We'll be offering both webinars and in-person local to San Diego offerings in the very near future. So we'd love for you to join us for any of that. And with that, I will go ahead and pass it back to, I'm guessing, Cody, who will then introduce Leo for his segment.
Thank you, Kelsey. I really appreciate all that information. I'm looking forward to watching some of those webinars too. We did have a question in the chat during that presentation as well. From Renee, wondering if anyone here, any of the presenters so far, have any information about what farmers and various crop types a budget per acre for an annual soil improvement budget, if that makes sense, the way I just said that. Renee, feel free to come off mute if you would like to expound on that at all, or maybe that's something we can discuss later, or if we have the time now.
Yeah, as is with the information provided in that question, I would say it would be highly variable depending on starting state of your soil, what kind of practices you're looking to implement, where you are. So if you want to provide any additional context, that would definitely help us out, but it depends. It tends to be our favorite answer when it comes to anything compost and soil related. So applies here as well.
I can add on a couple resources too. Yeah, I think the best studies I've seen are from the American Farmland Trust. Unfortunately, they're for the Central Valley. They do a really nice job of doing a cost benefit analysis of looking at all the costs that went into conservation practices, and oftentimes the resulting benefits or profit that comes from that. We haven't done it comprehensively locally. I know the Cooperative Extension the San Diego office is interested in doing a study comparing crop types like you suggest, but for our demonstration site in the Tijuana River Valley, it's proven to be very economical. I don't have exact numbers because it's on flat ground and small spaces. For the avocado grove that we've been studying, the budget's tighter and perhaps may not be cost effective unless we have the right equipment, and we're working on numbers for that. So I'd be glad to share that when the study is over next spring.
And I'll just add that the University of California, particularly UC Davis, a major ag focus, do publish, they have an agriculture economics program there at a number of the campuses where they publish reports on the economics of specific commodities. So depending on what you're growing, usually it's major commodities, but those reports will typically have broken out what the costs are. And the question was for soil improvement. Well, that'll include obviously tillage. It'll include all kinds of use of fertilizers and everything else. But if they're applying any compost or organics to that, that will be included typically in these reports, in what percentage, in what they're applying. And I think as Kelsey said, it's kind of all over the board. It really depends on the commodity, depends on the problems they're running into, but they're going to be responding quickly to decreases in water, for example. Anything that's going to help them manage their water more effectively is, I would expect that you're going to see a much more compost being budgeted just simply to capture more available stormwater as we try to come out of this serious drought crisis.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. And Renee, I've noted down your question and we can follow up with additional resources after the webinar. Cool. Well, last and very much not least, we have Leo here presenting on the Compost Connector program, and I will pass it off to you.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Cody. And thanks to the RCD of San Diego for hosting. I want to also say it's very nice to be on something that is sort of very local, but I'm also seeing a lot of relevance, other RCDs showing up, the compost industry, this program, and I think the way forward in general is really, it's so important that we're all sort of at the same table. And as you can see in the name Compost Connector, it's not just about connecting to get compost. I think these types of getting together are just really essential as the industry advances, as funding opportunities change. And so just thanks for being here and for hosting. A little bit, I guess, about me real quick. As you heard, I'm the Director of Operations for Zero Footprint. I oversee all of our outgoing grant programs, as well as a lot of our, grant programs that we sort of look for when it comes to facilitating, working with USDA, et cetera, and creating programs like this. You heard about the Restore California program. That's been in existence for a couple of years now. And I'll tell you a minute about how that program relates to Zero Footprint. So Zero Footprint's main sort of goal is about raising the profile of climate beneficial agricultural practices. And in a lot of ways, we follow the CDFA-Healthy Soils list of practices. And we're also out there essentially crowdfunding, raising money from businesses, from individuals, and trying to get grants to create programs like we do. We work in collaboration with not only private organizations, but public ones. And so we are looking at ways to make these practices more accessible to growers and producers. And you'll see that the background of Zero Footprint is actually really, it's been sort of a journey. I'll take you on that very quickly, which is in 2015, we started, and the main goal was really to assist restaurants in reducing their carbon footprint, seeing how they could change the way they source products, reduce energy use, et cetera, et cetera. And through that work, we found out about regenerative agriculture and thought that that was just an amazing way to sort of keep it within the food shed, if you will, by reducing and assisting restaurants in sort of connecting with those growers, improving their supply chain. And over the past couple of years, we've sort of shifted to instead of looking at ways that we can reduce the footprint of a restaurant, to looking at ways that they can contribute to these amazing practices that growers are able to put in place, with benefits that are not only include the drawdown of greenhouse gases, but healthier soil, more nutrient dense food, and of course, what we hope is improved efficiencies and yield and bottom line. So this is what we do. You can see we're raising funds from all different sources, and we have a program called 1% to restore the planet, and that those funds go into these Restore California awards. You can see a little bit about it here. We've done over the past 2.5 years about 70 projects, and I'm happy to get into that later. But the reason we got so excited about compost is because we noticed that about 3/4 of those Restore California grants were going towards compost application, showing that compost application on working lands is an incredibly cost-efficient way to sequester greenhouse gases. And that's not even taking into account the myriad other benefits that we're hearing right now, water holding capacity, increased organic matter, et cetera, et cetera. And it's just, so we got really interested in compost, and then we heard about 1383. So I'll tell a little bit about 1383, which is, it's been essentially on the books. It was passed in 2016, and it went into effect January of this year. And so technically what it's called is a short-lived climate pollutants avoidance bill, which is a mouthful. And the way that the state is looking at it is they're looking at reducing organics that are being sent to the landfill. Zero Footprint sees this as a kind of a missed opportunity, because we look at just that's looking only at the emissions that would come from organics in a landfill, but we know how effective compost can be on working land. So we see this as an opportunity to take a short-lived climate pollutant and avoiding it, and turning that avoidance not only into reduced emissions, but then a long-term sequestration through compost on working lands. So luckily, part of that bill includes targets that, again, are not only the diversion requirements where a city or county has to increase the amount of organic matter that is diverted from residents, from businesses, et cetera. So they have to increase the diversion from landfill based on, I believe it's 2014 or 2015 targets. But they include requirements that the cities and counties purchase what they're calling recycled organic waste products. And that can come in a variety of ways, but compost is the one that we are focusing on. And it is certainly the most accessible. And you can see here a list of additional kind of information and requirements as this bill gets up and running. So like I said, the bill went into effect just this year, and we're going to be seeing kind of a year-over-year ramp up over the next few years. And I can tell you that cities and counties are struggling to figure out how they're going to meet not only diversion requirements, but their procurement targets. And that's where Zero Footprint comes in. So Zero Footprint is acting as essentially a contractor. It's technically called a direct service provider, where we go to city and county governments and tell them about our program, and that we will assist them with not only procuring compost and purchasing it, but getting it to the best use. And in our case, we think best use is on working lands. And so in addition to just sort of connecting those two things, we are handling all the reporting and compliance requirements on the behalf of a city or county that would engage the Zero Footprint. So you can see here, we've got, the 1383 is come to pass. So we go and look, seek contracts with local governments. So again, city and counties that have these set procurement targets for year-over-year purchasing. And this is something that's totally new to most cities and counties. And so they are working to figure it out. And what Zero Footprint can do is come in and ideally, we sort of help them solve this problem. And not only the problem of procurement, but we bring in additional information to assist them with their compliance and potentially work towards not only their procurement requirements, but if they have a climate action plan that includes working lands, that is something that we're able to provide the information to through the projects. And that's where you producers come in, where you can apply to the Compost Connector program. So in a minute, I'm going to sort of take a couple questions about our program and also then go into the actual process of applying, if you will. But there are a couple sort of processes and stipulations to this. So the steps and requirements are here. And again, this will be available not only online through our website, but the recording of this webinar. So the first step is growers have to apply online. Then when we have that list of projects and have contracts in hand that meet certain requirements, we will reach out to those applicants who meet certain targets that I guess sort of line up with the contracts that we have from city and county governments. Then you will be prompted to sign basically a basic contract with zero footprint. And that essentially says that you won't be giving this procurement credit to another city or county, because this is a new process where all of a sudden there is value to the procurement credit, something that didn't have value before. Cities and counties are now, some of them are willing and able to pay for this use, and that's where our funding to pass along the discount to you, the grower, comes from. And in order to do that, we have to have a contract with you, and that sort of stipulates that those credits belong to the funding agency. Then you go ahead and place your compost and handle the logistics like normal. There are a couple things that are required, like the compost must come from a CalRecycle permitted facility. Since I've got some compost producers here, notification status from CalRecycle is also permitted. And then the final part of that is that the invoice from the composter has to indicate that this is a zero footprint project. That can be done in a couple different ways. As long as it's somewhere on the invoice, that is sufficient. And then lastly, we require a couple photos to document that the compost was delivered and spread or blown. And those can literally be photos you take with a smartphone, and you can email or even text them over to us. And what that does is that sort of completes the loop. Once we have the invoice and the photos, we'll go ahead and pay our portion, which varies, which you will know in advance when you sign the contract. You will know the discounted rate, and we pay our portion directly to the compost producer. And then you, the grower, are responsible for the balance. Now, the reason that we don't have a set amount right now is because different contracts with jurisdictions have different requirements. So some jurisdictions might be able to discount compost $2 a yard. Some might be able to do $20 a yard, and that varies based on the jurisdiction, the city or county themselves. And we sort of pass that along through you, and that's where the matching happens. So I want to pause for a second and see if there are any questions. I'm happy to discuss and go into a bit more detail before we start the review of the actual application process.
Yeah, so we got a question in the chat from Dr. Craig Kalaji, and he's asking, does Zero Footprint charge cities for handling their procurement requirements?
We do. We charge a small administrative fee, and that is paid from the city and county. So that doesn't impact the sort of discount amount that a grower or producer would receive.
And just for my knowledge here, to build off that question, are you seeing more cities seeking you out, or are you seeking more cities and counties out?
We're both right now. I think it's probably 50-50. And I think that because this is so new, to give, I guess, some perspective, CalRecycle has said that they will not be, there are fines associated with jurisdictions that do not comply, although they won't be starting the fines until 2024, I believe. So there are varying degrees of interest in starting to meet the procurement targets. And I think we've seen some jurisdictions, some cities or counties that are very interested. I've even been in touch with one county that is running a program, their own sort of conservation program, similar to the CDFA Healthy Soils program or Restore California, where that is sort of meeting both the needs of procurement of compost as well as just supporting their local growers for conservation practices. And then on the other extreme, I've talked to jurisdictions where they say, we're going to wait and see, or some where they're doing the math and saying, we might just rather pay the fine, which we don't want to see. And I know CalRecycle doesn't want to see. So to give a sense, we're seeing based on available budgets. One thing to note is that this, while this regulation is coming from CalRecycle, it does not include funding. So cities and counties have to create, find, or earmark their own budgets for this. And this is the first year that this is in place. And we are seeing budgets, range dramatically. The procurement targets are based on the population of a city or county. And so it varies where, say, San Francisco is going to have a higher procurement target than, a tiny little city or unincorporated area of a county. And so it is the beginning, but there are a number of good actors who do have budget and are interested in this. To give some sense of statewide, if 100% of cities and counties met their targets and met it through compost procurement, we would be seeing 1.8 million tons of compost purchased by cities and counties every year. So even if we get to 5 or 10% of that, there's a possibility this can really have an impact for a good number of growers.
Awesome. There were 2 questions in the chat regarding the components of compost, so it might be helpful to explain the CalRecycle connection and how they can find who their compost provider would be. I don't know if that should be in the application part or if you want to.
Yeah, we can run a little through the application. I will say we're working on a tool to be able to sort of put your address in and see kind of who's around you. That is coming in the future. I don't have a date for that. And I can go into the way you select your CalRecycle facility through our application when we get there. Certainly if you don't know, you can, oftentimes as I see a lot of growers do, ask your neighbor or see if you have an RCD that might know. And certainly if you don't, you can reach out to us and we can sort of tell you who's generally around. Because as many of you may know, we see the distance and the cost of freight is a major impact on the total cost of applying compost.
And then last question in the chat before maybe we run through the application, just a clarification about during the beginning of the application process, the applicant will be informed about the amount of the discount, just clarifying that that is the process.
That isn't the process. I wish that were, but because we are sort of constantly negotiating and trying to get various contracts with cities and counties, that we do not know at the time of an application what the discount will be. It does vary. To give some real world examples of some of our pilot projects, we have some composters that are interested in, some cities and counties that are interested in sort of paying as little as possible, and that can be, $1 a yard discount. And then we have some cities and counties that understand and have a larger budget and are able to pay, up to $15 or $20 a yard. So that's, I wish that we could know in advance. One thing that I will say is that not only is, and I recognize that it is difficult to sign up for something when you don't know what the number is. I totally get that. I will say number one is when we reach back out to you, we will have that information so that you won't be going into this blind. So that's part number one. And then secondly, is that we are working very hard to explain, the real cost of things. And when we get into a negotiation or a contract with the city or county, we're often educating them about what we call the true cost of applying compost, where we see the compost purchase itself is, often, a quarter of the cost of a full project. And so when possible, we try to get that budget number up. And then we also have other programs like the Restore California, which is not tied to compost specifically. It's tied to the cost effectiveness of carbon sequestration. And we use the COMET modeling tool. Later at the end, I'm happy to get into that more. But that program is another one where you're welcome to apply. And one thing is a powerful tool when we talk to city and county governments is showing the need for this. So even if you sign up and you don't know the dollar amount that might be available for a discount, just adding your project to this list gives us sort of more a more compelling argument as to the need and these sort of true costs associated with projects like this. And one thing that we're working on and that we're seeing is there are a variety of funding sources, and a program like Compost Connector is ready to sort of work with those additional sources. So be it our own program like Restore California, or a Healthy Soils program, or any other kind of funding sources, this is not exclusive to that. So we have seen and are willing to award, say, a Compost Connector. It's not an award, but let's say a discount to someone who's also working with Healthy Soils. So those things are not exclusive.
Awesome. There was no more questions in the chat, so feel free to continue.
Great. I'm just going to switch over to our website real quick so you can see everything is online, but we are available if you have particular questions. Let's see this. Okay, so this is our website. It's zerofootprint.org/compost, and that's particularly for this program. You'll see it's also available in Spanish, as is our application, and we do provide support in Spanish if necessary. So there's a couple more detailed, there's a list of the approved facilities, general questions, and compost rates. Unfortunately, this is application or broadcast rates provided by CDFA. This is not the dollar amount. And you'll see it's general kind of information that you saw already explaining how it works. This is also where we'll have updates as they become available. And on the bottom is a form here, and this is where you sign up. I'm going to switch to a full screen real quick so you can see it. And I'm just going to start filling it out. So here you put, the name of the farm or ranch. Okay, you go through, and if it has a star, it means it's required. This is where you can put your preferred language. If it's other, it does give you a chance to fill it in. I recognize the irony of an English language form that's asking if you have a preferred other language. Right now, the form is available in Spanish, and hopefully we will find a way to accommodate more languages as we go. And then the question of where your project is by county, and then a general estimate of how many tons you might be looking for. And I want to recognize especially that there's a bit of a tension between application rates, which are listed in tons, and then often ordering compost in yards. This is something that I always looking for advice on or working with, especially in the compost producer community. But it's a starting point. So we do ask for it in tons, and we start with a general range. So let's say 51 to 100 tons. And then here, this is actually really important, is that the months you anticipate applying. And because this is a yearly program, we encourage you to put, if you're applying in multiple seasons or months, by all means. We often get contracts that are relatively short term, or they're asking, they say, as governments do, you have 3 months to fulfill this contract, and we use this information that you're providing to see who is requesting compost in that time period. So that is really important. So I'll put 3 different months here, and then a general understanding for us of how you will be getting that compost to your land. So it's a choice of you, the applicant or the grower, will be making arrangements to pick it up. You can pay for the full cost of freight, or only a portion of freight. And if it comes to a portion of freight, we ask a general estimate, because this again helps us reach out to you based on the discount that's available. For example, if you weren't able to pay for any of the freight, we might know that $1 per yard discount isn't really sufficient. But if we have larger contracts, then we can reach out to you. So again, this is helpful for us to make sure we're directing the information that we have in as targeted a way as possible. So let's say I'll pay for 100% of that freight, and then I'm going to spread it with my own equipment. You heard Joel earlier mention things around equipment. Again, this understanding of how growers are able to spread is really helpful for us as we develop our program. We are in conversations with RCDs and equipment manufacturers and local compost facilities to sort of spark the conversation, because we do see that access to equipment is often a major barrier and also a cost. So this is helpful for us as the program develops. And then just a chance you can put somebody else in here if you think somebody that a neighbor, a friend, that would be interested in hearing about this program, and you submit, and then you get this. And this is then goes to our sort of list, and that doesn't mean that now you're in the list and tomorrow we're going to contact you with compost. It does depend again on our contracts and as we work through that. So what happens from here is, when we have funding and when we have something that is a match, we will send you an email and often request more information that is related to not only your operation, but your contract. Because what the next step is, you filling out this form like this, which has additional information. Again, a lot of the same things. If you've already filled something out, you will get this form or a link to your form to adjust any information and provide things like who will be signing the contract, what is your role, what is the physical property address, your zip code, et cetera, et cetera. Excuse me, et cetera, et cetera. And that will come into a form sort of like this, which we use to then send you a contract. Again, everything would be signed digitally. So it can be done from your computer or a smartphone. If that's a problem, we will talk to you. So again, we talked about CalRecycle facility. So in this form, you will have the ability to find a facility. Since you're here, Dr. K, I'll look you up. You just type that, and you can you see this? I know sometimes, can you see that I'm typing in? Yes, okay, great.
Yeah.
So perfect. So I've typed in San Pasqual Valley Soils, and I'll click there. And then now, obviously, I knew about this facility, so I could search for it. They're present, which means they're a permitted and an allowed facility for this program. That's obviously a little bit easier, but again, you have the ability to search, and there is a link on our website to the CalRecycle page, which is not that easy to navigate, but it does have a list of all the permitted facilities. So you'd put that there. This is showing, a little more information as we get to know, your preferred type of compost, et cetera, and if you work with a broker, because we have seen sometimes folks are working with either brokers or third-party companies to spread, and deliver. And as long as the compost can be traced back to an appropriate CalRecycle facility, our program will work with you. And then again, sort of more information. This is helpful for us to understand the land, the way this is being applied. And it is also essential when we look at our program and reporting for things like climate action plans, which have the potential to unlock additional dollars on city or county side, so that we can get those dollars to you. In general, I think it is important to know you should apply for numerous projects. That is totally fine. We really do ask that you put all the months that you are applying for and let us know, because this list is something that is how we sort of filter to see what is right for the various contracts that we have. And we do anticipate this being a year-over-year program, because the procurement requirements on behalf of the cities and counties are year-over-year. So I'll stop there, and I'm going to leave this up so that if there are specific questions about the program, the application process, the contract, we'll be getting the contract up, a sample contract up on our website, so that can be reviewed in advance. And it is totally possible that, folks will get, you sign up, and because it is year-over-year, I think we anticipate seeing only an increase in interest in this from cities and counties, especially when fines start being meted out.
Thank you, Leo. That is so helpful. I really appreciate the step-by-step detail you gave us there. Dr. K, you had a couple questions in the chat if you want to share those out.
Yeah, Leo, what percentage of the applicants, the total applicants you're receiving, actually are awarded a discount of some sort on their compost procurement? And what is the criteria you're using to apply to determine which farms qualify for the discount, which ones may not?
So essentially, as far as qualifications go, in general, what happens is it's a first come, first served basis. So we will review, and qualification is really, are you going to use it on working lands, and are you requesting it from a CalRecycle, a permitted or notification status facility? From there, what happens is when we have an award, a contract, we send out that secondary email and say, this is the award. This is going to be on a first come, first served basis. And we then go in order of essentially time, who's filling out the additional information and ready to sign a contract. And it is that first come, first served basis. I'll tell you right now, we're actually in the process of awarding an additional round. And so by the time those are awarded, I would say we've received, in terms of applications, I've got about 150 right now, and we will be able to award about 45. So it is, let's be generous and say in about a third of projects that are right now. Again, once you apply, especially if you indicate that this is something you do annually, you stay on the list. And so we are working to, build that list up, and also continue to find additional funding for those that aren't, awarded in the first sort of couple rounds. And one thing to note as well is different jurisdictions have, there are times when they have different requirements. So some jurisdictions will require that we prioritize local projects or specific composter facilities, and we follow their requirements as well. But in general, one thing that's unique about the way that we're approaching this is it allows us to open up with sort of like a statewide market, where it is totally possible and has happened where, let's say, San Francisco County has funded projects in Mendocino or in San Diego. And so that that helps actually everyone, because obviously San Francisco does not have working lands. So their ability to use compost is locally is really limited.
Very interesting. Yeah. And that was one of the questions, is the difference between urban farming operations versus rural. Any comments on how you use that as a criteria? I assume the shorter the distance, if you can use the material in an urban environment where much of it's generated, that may have more weight than, let's say, having to transport material from a site, a compost site, to much larger, farther away.
Yeah, and that that's really astute. That's something that we're working on right now. That distance isn't being factored in to the sort of identification or selection of projects, because the discount amount varies. I think at the end of the day, it really is up to the grower to decide what's sort of worthwhile to them. And in my experience, having done, in the past couple of years, like you saw, 70 or 80 of these compost projects, I see quite a wide range. And generally we assume sort of roughly $50 to $100 per ton by the time a project is completed. So again, that's purchasing the compost, freight and spreading, and sometimes technical assistance from an RCD. So unfortunately, that discount is yet to cover, a full $100 a ton. But there have been situations where jurisdictions are able to cover, like I said, 20, 30 or more dollars per ton. And in those situations, it is up to the grower to sort of decide what the value to them is and what's worth it. And we are in touch with a grower before any contracts happen, before anything is sort of purchased, so that they can make those decisions themselves based on the available discount.
Thank you.
Leo, I had a couple questions as well. So as a technical assistance provider, I'm trying to think from a producer lens, and there was a note in the application that said preferred type of compost. And when you ask that, how specific are you hoping that folks get? Is that like, yeah.
One of the things that we're hoping to do is create a better understanding of what types of compost growers want. So when it comes to that, the dream situation is if you know which facility you want, that the growers put in the actual name of the compost that they're looking for. But it is kind of an open form. So we see, and it's still very helpful to understand, maybe that grower is looking for OMRI certified or STA or CDFA organic. We're very open. And that is, anything that someone can put in there is helpful to us. One of the things that we're working on is starting to understand what is important to growers, so that we can be in touch with, lots of the composters here, and just understand what people are looking for, so that we can potentially facilitate kind of an easier access to those products. So like I said, ideally, if you know the product name, that's what we're looking for, but any additional information is very helpful to us.
Oh, thank you. So we've got a little more time here. If anybody else has any questions, feel free to enter them in the chat or come off mute.
This is Craig again. Real interesting question. The way Senate Bill 1383 is structured, cities get more credit for a composted material than just a non-composted mulch. However, you can use compost as a mulch. In that case, if you use a coarse mulch that's been composted versus a chip and grind mulch that's non-compost, would the city, based on your experience, Leo, get more credit towards the procurement requirement because of that? And has that been discussed?
So you're bringing up two different issues. I'll address the sort of easier one first, which is, well, I guess luckily they're both sort of cut and dry actually. So the first is compliant mulch. So to count for 1383, it does have to come from a facility. So it can't just be, like a Parks and Rec where they're chipping and grinding on site. And in that case, that facility also has to do pathogen testing, et cetera, for it. And so there are compliant mulches, but not all mulch is sort of SB 1383 compliant. And that's going to lead into my next answer, which is CalRecycle in the wording stipulates a couple different things. So we talked about how there are a variety of products that can go towards meeting the procurement targets, right? Electricity, renewable natural gas, compost, and mulch. And the way the targets are set up is it's 0.08 tons per resident in the city or county. And further, so that's what the way, so broadly they look at procurement tons of recycled organic waste products. And then furthermore, each type of product has its own conversion rate, right? So the easy example would be, you don't measure electricity in tons, right? So there's a conversion rate there. Now, even though you can measure compost in tons, they also provide a conversion rate. So while the target, let's imagine a crazy world in which a target was just 1 ton of recycled organic waste product. Now, the legislation dictates that that in compost, that equals 0.58 tons. So if they procure exactly 0.58 tons of compost, that equals 1 ton of their recycled organic waste procurement. When it comes to compost, when it comes to mulch, it is a 1-to-1 conversion ratio. So they have to procure 1 ton of compost in order to meet that 1 ton of procurement requirement.
Or 1 ton of mulch, you mean, to meet the 1 ton?
I'm sorry, yes, it's 1 ton of mulch to 1 ton of procurement. But compost has a weightier value, if you will. And so this is something that we handle in terms of reporting for the jurisdictions, is that conversion and tracking everything with a ridiculously long paper trail to demonstrate to CalRecycle that we're complying with their numbers and demonstrating how we came up with those numbers.
Good, thank you.
I'll chime in again. As a employee of an RCD who works with you, what is your suggestion for other RCDs interested in getting connected to working with you so that you can spread your resources?
Definitely. I think, we consider all parties at this call essential partners. So that's RCDs, it's growers, and it's certainly the compost producing facilities, because this program relies on some form of partnership with every stakeholder. And so I would definitely encourage RCDs to certainly let growers know about this or facilitate growers in signing up. This sign-up process, as you saw, is much simpler than our Restore California program. And even that one, as we heard, this is designed to be relatively friendly and easy to apply for. Excuse me. And so there are a couple ways that this happens when it comes to RCD partners. I'd say, again, spread the word. encourage growers to apply, assist them in applying if that's possible, reach out to us. And also, I think a key part is being an ally in helping to get their city or counties on board with looking to meet their procurement targets through compost. It is effective and it does help, even when it's not a state market, even when a city or county is saying, hey, we want to only work with this facility, or we want the compost or the mulch to stay within the county or 100 miles or whatever it may be, that is still very beneficial to all the parties involved. And so I think the more we can sort of present together to the funding agencies, in this case, cities and counties, the more we can assist growers in getting reduced cost compost, because it's not cheap. And the more we can, reduce the cost, the better it is for the environment, for the grower, for soil health, for water conservation, for yield, for nutrient density, for jurisdictions looking to meet their procurement targets.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Leo. If anyone else has questions, feel free to throw them in the chat or come off mute. I've just linked the application to Compost Connector in the chat. And presenters, if you would like to drop your information in the chat here so that folks can reach out to you with any further questions, that would be awesome. Thank you so much. This has been really informative. I'm really happy to hear that you created this in a proactive fashion, not a reactive fashion. And I think that's really important for this work. So really appreciate your time. Thank you, Joel, for presenting. And thank you, Kelsey, for sharing about those awesome upcoming opportunities to learn more. If that's all from everybody, then I think we can sign off for the day. And we will be sending out a follow-up email with this recording, and this recording will be super helpful for folks looking to apply in the future. And again, if you have any other questions, I'll drop our information here as well. And presenters, do you have any last notes here for folks? Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. I hope you have a great day, safe weekend, and you'll be hearing from us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cody.
Thank you, everyone.
Good luck on your applications, everyone.